Welcome to this February 9th episode of the DaveCast. Hope your week is off to a good start and you've got a chance to get maybe outside and enjoy some of these pretty days that we've been having. We are in a teaching series on the Sermon on the Mount, and back on Saturday we took kind of a huge block of scripture where we looked at a high-level overview of these "you have heard it said, but I say to you" sayings of Jesus, in which he's explaining how he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And so what I want to do this week is to go back and look at some of those specific scriptures from this section and drill down a little further. Starting today with Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 and 22, which I will go ahead and read for us. "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment.' But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, 'Raca,' is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, 'You fool,' will be in danger of the fire of hell." So many years ago, there was a member of the Missouri State Legislature who accepted a $25,000 bribe for his vote on a certain bill. And then sometime later, he received a $50,000 bribe from the opposing side. And so he returned the original $25,000. Well, he got caught. This corruption was discovered and he had to go to court. And so as he was testifying, the examining attorney asked him, "Why was it that you returned the $25,000? And the legislator, drew himself up to his full height and in a voice that showed his deep scorn of the lawyer for even asking such a question, he said, "I'll have you know, good sir, that I'm too conscientious to take money from both sides." And so my point in telling you this funny little story is that human nature is such that even when we get caught in a sinful practice, we human beings are very good at quickly justifying ourselves as being righteous. And I think that's particularly true when it comes to our anger. There is such a thing as righteous anger. And as Christ followers, it's totally appropriate for us to get upset and angry over the evils of injustice such as racism, child abuse, sex trafficking, those kinds of things. They shouldn't make us mad. But listen, no matter how reprehensible the people or activities we're condemning, we still aren't justified to sin in our responses. We have to look at other verses like Ephesians 4:26, which says, "When you are angry, do not sin, and be sure to stop being angry before the end of the day." And so those of us with confrontational personalities might want to ask ourselves the question, is my motive to be right or to be righteous? Before ripping into the offended parties, and making mincemeat of them, I think we need to examine our anger and see if it truly is righteous anger. Psychologists tell us that anger is a secondary emotion. And they tell us that because our anger tends to cover up or be a reaction for other vulnerable feelings we might be having. A primary feeling is what we feel right before we feel anger. We're reacting to something. We almost feel something else before we get angry. And so what does that look like? Well, we might first feel afraid or attacked or offended or disrespected or forced or pressured or something. And if any of those feelings are intense enough, we think of that emotion as anger. And what makes anger particularly dangerous is because it is self-reinforcing. Think about it. When we get angry, we often get results, which means we are more likely to get angry again the next time around. But anger is a shortcut that short circuits whole relationships and true satisfaction in life. Psychologist Neil Clark Warren, in his book, Make Anger Your Ally, puts it this way. Oftentimes with anger, we get what we ask for, but not what we want. Oftentimes with anger, we get what we ask for, but not what we really want. You get the immediate results that you're looking for, but you lose out on the long-term fulfillment and joy in life. So it's been said, either learn to control your anger or it will control you. And trust me, you are going to be happier. We're going to be a happier person if we deal with the anger in our lives. Anger is a real problem. Anger is a real sin. And here in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says it's akin to murder. And so I think if we are going to learn to control our anger, we must first of all develop our self-awareness. Our self-awareness. We got to pause and ask, what is really going on here? What is it that I am really angry about? Are we angry because our feelings were hurt? I mean, I know that's true for me. A lot of times, just my reaction, I get mad, but my feelings are really hurt. Are we angry because we are grieving the loss of something, or we're afraid of losing something? If anger is a secondary emotion, we got to get in touch with what that primary emotion is. And so it begins with confessing, admitting it to ourselves and admitting it to God. If we're going to love like God asks us to love, we got to first deal with our anger. There's a story found in John chapter 5. Jesus was in Jerusalem at a pool called Bethsaida, and there many sick people kind of gathered there every day hoping to be made well. There was this legend that every now and then the pool waters moved, and then the first person into the pool would be healed. And so on this particular day, Jesus saw a man lying on the pool who had been paralyzed all his life and had been there for 38 years. And so Jesus walked up to the man and asked him a very simple question. He asked him, "Do you want to get well?" It was a good question. After all, I've been there 38 years. Do you want to get well? And so there's a great truth here for us too. In order to get well, to deal with our anger, we have to want to get well. I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl back on Sunday night, but one of the Super Bowl ads that I thought was particularly good was the one that Bruce Springsteen narrated called The Middle. And the ad featured these sort of wide shot vistas of the American countrysides with the open roads, but mostly centered on this tiny chapel in Lebanon, Kansas, that purportedly sits in the geographical center of the continental United States. And so the narration goes on, all are more than welcome to come meet here in the middle. And then he goes on to say, it's no secret the middle has been a hard place to get to lately, between red and blue, between servant and citizen, between our freedom and our fear. And then the next line was one that really got to me. It said, now fear has never been the best of who we are. Now fear has never been the best of who we are. I've had a lot of people tell me, as a way of justifying the bitter division we find ourselves in our country and in our churches, is that people are angry. But do we really want to get well, or do we just want to be angry? Because if anger is a secondary emotion, what is really going on? And I think it has a lot to do with fear. Fear of the other, fear of loss. Fear we'll be taken advantage of if we try to meet in the middle. Fear. We're afraid. So let me go back to that question Jesus asked that man at the pool that day. Do you want to get well? Do we want to get well? Do we want to live out God's kind of love, to be more patient, to unleash kindness, to stop envying, to overcome our pride, to be people who show respect for other people, to be persons who are not easily angered, to get well? Then we have to ask God to help us get through this struggle to get well. And I know in the struggle with fear and anger, sometimes it's hard to imagine that we'll be ever able to get rid of those painful emotions from our lives. But listen, if what we've been doing worked, we wouldn't be stuck in these negative cycles, struggling even to pray sometimes. The man at the Bethesda pool, he'd been there for 38 years. How long are we going to wait around with this? And I don't have any easy solutions, but I do want to suggest 3 prayerful actions that maybe can help us release our anger and overcome fear in our lives. And the first is this: find a quiet place and simply just pray the Lord's Prayer. And when you reach the phrase, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, stop and really think about what this means. Envision what it would be like if you managed to forgive the other. And then using these new thoughts and perspectives, try to change the negative cycle. Next, every morning when you wake up, ask God to help you to release your fear and anger to Jesus today, just one day at a time. And trust that God will take this burden from you if you don't hold on to it too tightly. Work to stay aware of the need to release your anger whenever you become aware of it during the day, asking for God's help. You might even want to try flexing your fingers in a letting go gesture when you begin to feel angry and afraid. And then every night before you go to bed, ask God to forgive you for the fear and anger that you've shown that day. Do this knowing that God is ready, God is willing, and God is able to forgive you much more than you may be willing to forgive yourself or to forgive others. And then deliberately and calmly recall the day's moments of fear and anger and ask God to forgive you for each of them and to remove the sting of pain you may have caused to others. We do well to remember that our transformation is the work of God. And when it happens to us, it will be God's gift. Well, that's a lot to think about, probably more even so to put into practice. So I'm going to stop here for today. I'll be back on Thursday as we continue our study of the Sermon on the Mount. Until then, you keep bringing the hope, and I'll see you then. God bless you.